Welcome to the hit German podcast show, Klima, and I'm your host for today, Autumn Evans. Today, Klima is available wherever you do your daily listening, from Apple Podcasts, Spotify, to YouTube. Join us every Sunday as we expand your brain with pop culture commentary about climate change issues, our own personal stories, and of course, climate optimism. On today's episode, we'll be discussing the Paris Climate Agreement, concepts of mitigation, adaptation, environmental justice, and where we stand as a nation on these topics. Let's dive in. On November 14, 2016, the German government approved German Climate Action Plan 2050, a policy document on climate security. The strategy lays out the steps Germany will take to reach its various national greenhouse gas emission mitigation commitments through 2050. In September 2016, the German parliament collectively ratified the Paris Agreement. Germany did not send its own NDC, but instead, it is a member of the EU, the European Union, which is pledged to reduce emissions by at least 40% below the 1990 levels by 2030. According to the Climate Action Tracker, due to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic and the corresponding economic crisis, they have come to find that Germany is now very likely to reach their 2020 target of at least 40% reductions below the 1990s level emissions. Germany, like the rest of the European Union, wants to be carbon neutral by 2050. Something that I found to be quite interesting is that if a goal is missed or exceeded, the difference will be spread out equally over a sector's remaining annual carbon budgets until 2030, according to the legislation. Germany's national climate goals may be increased but not lowered in their commitment, according to Clean Energy Wire. So, as you can see on the screen corresponding for our YouTube watchers, the Paris Climate Agreement was ratified, and their long-term goals are to pursue greenhouse gas neutrality by 2050. Climate change, mitigation, adaptation, and environmental justice. The distinctions. The distinction between climate change, mitigation, and adaptation are the methods in which that mitigation focuses on mitigating the causes of climate change, decreasing future impacts, while adaptation focuses on the limiting of the detrimental consequences of climate change while simultaneously taking advantage of any benefits that may emerge. In terms of mitigation, a multi-step approach was used to weigh the industries and areas of demand in which German suppliers would contribute to technology transition to emerging markets and developing countries through their innovations, goods, and services. Examples of this are through low emission energy supply on and off the grid. Further examples can go into wind power systems, off-grid photovoltaic systems, solar collectors, biogas systems, planning of microgrids, low voltage site networks, and combined heat and power units. Germany is undergoing the transition towards low emission mobility and transportation by utilizing a combined road and rail transport, intermodal logistics, efficient ship and harbor logistics, as well as low-emission urban logistic concepts. These methods are being paired with the environmentally friendly public transportation, rapid bus transit systems, traffic demand management, and non-motorized transportation. With regard to Germany's approach to climate change adaptation, it has been identified and prioritized that agriculture and forestry are their primary focuses. One of the key approaches to climate-compatible agriculture are ways to go about this by including captivating and informative ideas that effectively implement drought and salt-resistant plants, irrigation systems, electronic control monitoring, as well as climate-tolerant livestock. One of the other areas Germany has focused on is water management. This has been done by using desalination plants powered by renewables, water harvesting technologies, and gray water recycling. Environmental justice. It calls for a comprehensive set of safeguards against nuclear testing, mining, manufacturing, and storing toxic hazardous waste toxins, as well as nuclear testing, which violates the human right to clean air, soil, and water and food. It reiterates the inherent right of all populations to socio-political, ecological, and self-determination. Germany has established ambitious carbon reduction goals, such as the 2050 Climate Change Strategy and the 2020 Action Program. The German Strategy for Adaptation to Climate Change was introduced by the Federal Cabinet on the 17th of December in 2008. A system was developed to respond to the consequences of climate change in Germany. It mainly represented the Federation's contribution, thereby serving as a reference to other stakeholders. Germany and the COVID-19 mitigation and adaptation. GHG's emission from Germany will be 9 to 11% lower in 2020 than in 2019. Restricted mobility and quarantine initiatives have drastically decreased industrial development and energy consumption due to the COVID-19 pandemic and have put almost a complete halt to commercial airlines. Now, let's talk about a couple of programs that are seeking to further environmental justice in Germany. Climate Alliance Germany is a network of over 120 civil society groups, including environmental organizations, construction organizations, church, youth, education, church, and health organizations, as well as trade unions and public organizations. The Alliance, which was formed in 2007, seeks to establish a united front to persuade German decision makers to implement climate-friendly policies. The Climate Alliance Germany supports proactive German climate and energy policies at local, national, European, and global levels. It provides a contrast to the demands of the many political and economic players, as well as a large coalition. Also, it aims to resolve the climate policy blockades. It puts people for further collective action and thereby illustrates that climate security is a serious problem of society. Greenwatch calls for a democratic, technological, and social system that will guarantee a future of the people of Germany's South, where they're being driven to the outskirts of society by unbridled globalization, whose life is endangered by the erosion of their ecological and economic roots. So, to close our podcast for today, I come to the conclusion after having read about these particular organizations to find that they do need to indeed promote more environmental justice and advocate for the people of the country. Something that stood out to me that seemed a bit troubling was that the federal government was not helping to aid in the efforts to the people. Both organizations are non-governmental bodies, and they have to take environmental justice into their own hands. Once again, this has been Autumn Evans sharing with you for Klima today. Auf Wiedersehen, my friends.